The pandemic turned our entire lives upside down, but it particularly affected our relationships. Whether we were single or partnered, the pandemic really forced us to rethink everything about our love lives. That's why today I'm chatting with Meredith Goldstein, a love expert who is the host of the Love Letters podcast by the Boston Globe, to chat about how love and relationships will evolve in the post-pandemic world. I'm Liz Seagren, a senior staff writer here at Fast Company. We all want to be the best versions of ourselves, and that's why I come to you every week with recommendations that will make your life happier, healthier, and more meaningful. So Meredith, you are a love expert, and I'm so excited to be talking to you today. Tell us a little bit about when you first started writing about love.
Well, I certainly wasn't a love expert when I first started, but I started about 12 years ago with an advice column. And even before then, I was always interested in writing about trends in dating and marriage and divorce and relationships. So for a long time now, I have just been following other people's love lives.
Well, that's actually really interesting because I would love to hear what trends you saw as we went into the pandemic as far as dating and relationships went.
Well, interestingly enough, people were just so tired of dating before the pandemic. There was a lot of dating fatigue specifically. So people would tell me, oh, I'm so sick of being on the apps. And then all of a sudden they couldn't be on the apps, or if they were, it was just very passively. So I think I saw people actually taking a moment, taking a beat to take stock of what they really wanted. I also think it escalated relationships pretty quickly. You know, if you had had 3 dates with someone at that point, you had to decide, is this person in my pod, in my bubble? So a lot of people were forced to make much larger decisions about possible partners than they would have in normal times. So it's really like brought people to a place of truth with themselves very quickly.
So I think an interesting question is, as we move back to normalcy, and we hope that that's going to happen relatively soon, what aspects of pandemic dating do you think will stay on, and what things are just going to sort of disappear?
Well, I do think there's going to be this incredible freedom and coming back into the world, and that honesty, I think, is what's going to remain. People saying, here's what I want. Like, I find you attractive. We're in a bar because we're allowed to be. So I'm just going to say it. I think there's going to be a real sense of freedom and seizing the day. And that is both exciting and deeply scary. I think in some ways, I think it'll be wonderful, but I think that, there's going to be a level of transparency that perhaps there never was. And I also think that talking about COVID itself gave people a new experience talking about uncomfortable things. Have you been tested? Are you seeing other people? I think the transparency is going to remain, just people saying what they want. And saying what they want quickly instead of all these, talking around desires, like I am looking for a partner. I am not looking for something casual, or I am looking for something casual. All of a sudden, people who could have very surface conversations had to go a bit deeper than that. So it is my hope that these deeper conversations and the transparency remain.
So to break this down specifically based on different types of relationships, if you have been partnered, like me, I'm married and I have been, I would say, stuck in a very small space with my lovely husband and my child. What tips would you have for people who have really, spent a lot of time together and have seen each other at their best and at their worst over the last year? What can we be doing now to transition into this new normal?
The first thing is no one should be offended by someone who needs alone time. If a spouse or a partner says to you, you know what, I would like to take a week away on my own, please, it's not about you. It's just about them. And it's just about having the moment to do that. I think also this is a really good moment to thank each other, to say, wow, maybe I was upset about certain things you did during the year, but now I'm going to take a moment to realize all that you did do. And I'm sure there have been a lot of missing thank yous in the last 12 months. So this is a really good time to acknowledge them and give them.
Single folks who have dealt with this as we mentioned before, it's been a strange period of dating. Everything has slowed down. I imagine that there are a lot of anxieties going back into the fast-paced world of online dating again, where I'm sure some people are just going to be completely throwing themselves into the deep end and like wanting to have a lot of sex. And how do single people prepare for this crazy period we're about to see?
The first thing is, don't go back into that dating fatigue. If it was causing you grief and misery, don't do anything that's not fun, right? So keep the pace slow, unless the fast part is fun for you. I would also say don't apocalypse date. That's what I'm sort of calling this idea that what if this happens? What if we're in lockdown again, right? If there is a feeling of desperation for a partner because of what you've experienced, that shouldn't be the case. There is nothing that should make you rush. And the one thing I would also say is keep the Zoom dating. A lot of people have had incredibly successful courtships on FaceTime and Zoom, where they were better at getting to know someone with one or two first dates online and then having that first drink. So sometimes it makes it easier to skip the bad dates you would have had before, when you get to have those bad dates in the privacy of your own home.
Now, for the third category, there are some people who were really fortunate because they found love during the pandemic. But obviously things are going to change a lot for them when life goes back to normal. So for those couples, what would you advise them to do as they return to normalcy for their best chance of preserving that relationship?
So for couples who have fallen in love in isolation, I think there are a few things they can do. One, take baby steps. Maybe going to a family cookout with 45 people isn't the first thing to do once you leave the house. Maybe it's one friend at a time. The second thing I'd say is remember it's a restart in some ways. You may have been with someone for 8 months, but this is still brand new. That means if it's frustrating, if it feels like it's not working, if it feels like a mismatch, give it a moment. Don't feel this pressure that it should work as well outside of the house as it did inside of the house. Some of these relationships won't be meant to be outside of a pandemic. Many of them will be, but it's going to take some adjustment time. So don't be frustrated.
Many of us experienced hard-learned lessons as we dealt with the relationships during the pandemic, and it would be a shame to let some of those lessons go to waste. And I, for one, want to bring some of those lessons with me as we all transition into the next phase of our lives.